The Book of the Damned, by Charles Hoyfort, Chapter 8J. Clinkers, said to have fallen during a storm at Kilburn, July 5, 1877. According to the Kilburn Times, July 7, 1877. Quoted by Mr. Simmons, a street had been literally strewn during the storm with a mass of clinkers estimated at about 2 bushels. Sizes from that of the walnut to that of a man's hand. Pieces of the clinker can be seen at the Kilburn Times office. If these clinkers, or cinders, were a fuse from one of the super mercantile constructions from which coke and coal and ashes occasionally fall to this earth, or, rather, to the super Sargasso Sea, from which dislodgement by tempests occurs, it is intermediatistic to accept that they must merge away somewhere with local phenomena of the scene of precipitation. If a red-hot stove should drop from a cloud into Broadway, someone would find that at about the time of the occurrence, a moving van had passed, and that the moving men had tired of the stove, or something, that it had not been really red-hot, but had been ridged instead of blacked, by some absent-minded housekeeper. Compared with some of the scientific explanations that we have encountered, there's considerable restraint, I think, in that one. Mr. Simmons learned that in the same street, he emphasizes that it was a short street, there was a fire engine station. I had such an impression of him hustling and bustling around at Notting Hill, searching cellars until he found one with newly arrived coal in it, ringing doorbells, exciting a whole neighborhood, calling up to second-story windows, stopping people in the streets, hotter and hotter on the trail of the wretched impostor of a chemist's pupil. After his efficiency at Notting Hill, we'd expect to hear that he went to the station, and something like this. It is said that clinkers fell in your street at about 10 minutes past 4 o'clock, afternoon of July 5th. Will you look over your records and tell me where your engine was at about 10 minutes past 4, July 5th? Mr. Simmons says, I think that most probably they had been raked out of the steam fire engine. June 20, 1880, it was reported that a thunderbolt had struck the house at 180 Oakley Street, Chelsea, falling down the chimney into the kitchen grate. Mr. Simmons investigated. He describes the thunderbolt as an agglomeration of brick, soot and burnt coal and cinder. He says that, in his opinion, lightning had flashed down the chimney and had fused some of the brick of it. He does not think it remarkable that the lightning did not then scatter the contents of the grate, which were disturbed only as if a heavy body had fallen. If we admit that climbing up the chimney to find out is too rigorous a requirement for a man who may have been large, dignified and subject to expansions, the only unreasonableness we find in what he says, as judged by our more modern outlook, is, I suppose that no one would suggest that bricks are manufactured in the atmosphere. Sounds a little unreasonable to us, because it is so of the positivistic spirit of former times, when it was not so obvious that the highest incredibility and laughability must merge away with the proper, as the Scientific American Supplement would say. The preposterous is always interpretable in terms of the proper, with which it must be continuous, or clay-like masses such as have fallen from the sky, tremendous heat generated by their velocity. They bake bricks. We begin to suspect that Mr. Simmons exhausted himself at Notting Hill. It's a warning to efficiency fanatics.